The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message. I love you. Now, back to our show.
I see all this potential, and I see it squandered. God damn it, an entire generation pumping gas, waiting tables, slaves with white collars. Our great war is a spiritual war. Our Great Depression is our lives. We're slowly learning that fact. We're very, very pissed off.
For 40 years, secret terrorist organizations, many trained by Western intelligence agencies, have manipulated the political control of European sovereign states by a campaign of terror and murder. Originally part of a secret network, these groups changed from being defenders of state security into attackers of the established political order. Until 2 years ago, that secret network was generally known by the single word, Gladio. On November the 9th, 1990, the Prime Minister of Italy, Giulio Andreotti, revealed to his own parliament and the world the existence of a top-secret European-wide network of secret agents. It was called Gladio. This network of stay-behind groups was intended to fight a Soviet invasion of Western Europe. Andreotti's announcement led to an immediate reaction in the capitals of Europe. The suspicion was that some parts of the Gladio structures were involved in internal subversion.
I said it could be a lone nut who, sees guys with bright turbans and thinks it's bin Laden and is sick of looking at it and gets mad at his wife and is destitute and wants to commit suicide by cop, so he goes over and shoots some people at a Sikh temple. That was a possibility Sunday, and we said that could be what it was, but my gut, because of the timing and the reports of 4 shooters, didn't say that. Then the PSYOP officer stuff came out, and the police recordings and all the rest of it, and the timing and the hyping of it. I mean, here's my final point, and I'm going to your calls. You better look up Operation Gladio. Much of it's been declassified. Mass shootings and bombings of movie theaters, school buses, train stations, you name it, all over Europe. It's all come out in the Italian government. Their own president went public. Operation Gladio was staged to blame the Second Amendment. Period. Operation Gladio was staged to blame their Second Amendment style systems of liberty and freedom over there, and was used to disarm them. And it was used to go after any political party they didn't like, whether it be right-wing or left-wing, that was anti-globalist and wasn't playing ball. We sell a book called Gladio, NATO's Dagger at the Heart of Europe. That's how you nudge people into doing what you want. And you better look into it, you better find out, because Operation Gladio Part 2 is being implemented inside the United States. It started at the end of World War II. NATO put in countries they thought were going to be overrun by the Soviets. The bankers knew they were. They were funding the Soviets as a clash of civilizations. To be able to be sleeper cells to engage in sabotage. They were really used to stage terror attacks to blame their enemies, because frame-ups are the #1 way to be able to go after your enemies. I mean, it's very simple. No amount of regular propaganda can be as effective as staging a shooting or bombing and blaming your enemy. You drug up the patsy or you kill them on the spot. These are all the telltale signs.
That some people went, I don't know how many, some people went inside, unidentified people went inside the church, and they did a bunch of shooting, and we were having a holy ceremony was going on right now, and the shooting just went like that, and I can't even talk. And
yeah, Ted, we're just hearing from this man again that he spoke with the people who had been evacuated. He said they were in there at the time. A SWAT team did shoot a man who was believed to be the shooter, and 2 others were believed to be shooters with him. We do not know what happened with them, where they might be, but that is what he is being told by those people who have been evacuated. And we also are told, he was saying that the person or persons were not members of this Sikh temple. They look to be outsiders, and we do not know why they targeted this particular place.
15 minutes ago, I should say, we spoke to the president of the Sikh Religious Society of Wisconsin, who had been alerted to what has taken place. He told us that at about 10:30 Central Time in the United States, that is about nearly 2 hours ago, multiple gunmen entered the temple and shot people. He believed the numbers were anywhere between 6 and 12 people, and possibly as high as 20.
Man who said his father had been wounded reported that there had been multiple gunmen. Others who were inside the building at the time of the attack described it as a very coordinated thing. The White
It's my uncle, they said, they called me that he got shot, just get there. So as soon as he got here, so we are still here. So then I talked to the head priest, he had his phone, and then he was telling, because till 10, almost like 11:45, there was no ambulance or anything was going inside. Those people were shot, they was lying on the floor. So almost like for 1 hour, they was just lying on the floor without any help. So I think they had multiple shooters.
My dad is out and at the hospital, and we're just relaying information back and forth and trying to get as much info as possible.
What, if any, have you learned from him about what transpired inside, or from your mother?
So the most I can learn, or the most I know as of now, is that there are multiple shooters. There's multiple people. It was a very well coordinated thing. It wasn't haphazard, and I think that's why police and everybody are taking the proper, protocol to get the situation under control.
Not trying to jeopardize anything and describe what's happening currently, but as far as your mother, she was at the time that we spoke at one point hiding. Did she give you any sense for how many people at that time, at least, were hiding?
The sense over there was when she started hiding in the closet, she didn't know how many people were out there, so she just kept saying, they are out there, they are out there, they are out there, and she kept hanging up the phone every time she would hear something go off. Then at one point we heard that the movement went towards the kitchen and releasing of gas and stuff.
We have our temple service every Sunday, starts around 10:30, and usually goes in the afternoon, and around between 10 and 10:30, four white males who were dressed darkly, dressed in all black clothing, came in and opened fire on our congregation. And from what I'm told, about 20 to 25 people have been hit. And my uncle was one of them. He's been taken to the hospital. I don't know how many others have been taken to the hospital. But basically, there are people hiding in there right now, or there were. I don't know how many hostages left. One of the gunmen is down, so there's 3 left. And we're just praying that everyone gets out safely. They're able to capture these gunmen. Ideally, bring them to justice.
The first officer on the scene is a 20-year law enforcement veteran, an extremely accomplished tactical officer. When he arrived on the scene, he engaged an active shooter outside of the temple. Multiple rounds were exchanged. The officer was shot multiple times. He is currently at Frederick Hospital and being treated for multiple gunshot wounds. He is in surgery. His condition is not known at this time. The emergency medical personnel, the tactical personnel who've gone through the scene have initially identified what they believe to be 4 deceased inside of this temple and 3 deceased outside of the temple, one of whom is the shooter.
My whole world just fell apart knowing that my whole family was there at one point in time. It's the scariest feeling in the world. Scariest feeling in the world. Not just a relative, but your whole family. I could have been without my whole family. Not one relative, not mom, not dad, and I'm just blessed with no feeling.
Yeah, and then that's...
It's a sad when I saw my mom and hugged her.
Hey,
no
Tom.
feeling. I don't know who did this or why they did it or what you get from it. But no, you affected so many families today. It messed up so many people's lives.
Our officers responded to the scene, did find a victim
and we're dealing with that individual when our officer, a 20-year veteran, was ambushed, shot multiple times. He is currently at the hospital undergoing surgery. We expect him to recover. And another officer who was on scene was engaged by the suspect. Our officer did engage that individual, and that individual is deceased from the actions that our officer took. It stopped a tragic event that could have been a lot worse. There was a service going on with many people at that location. What we've done now is it's taken most of the day to clear that area, that the church itself and the surrounding area, because of conflicting reports that we got about how many people may be involved. We just were able to clear it. We're treating this as a domestic terrorist type incident, and therefore the FBI has the resources needed to help investigate that. Total from what we have, I believe we have 7 deceased and 3 injured, including our officer. How many? 7 deceased,
What do you know about
3 injured, including our officer.
What do you know about the suspect?
Right now, I don't have any information for you on the suspect. That's being checked into, and it's part of the criminal investigation, so right now I won't be giving you anything on that right now.
What about a weapon?
Weapon.
Domestic terrorism is somebody who's doing some active terrorism within the confines of the United States. It's not from another country or anything like that. It's within the United States.
Have you recovered a weapon?
As far as a weapon, there are weapons on scene. That hasn't been recovered yet. The evidence team hasn't gone in. There are weapons involved that will be recovered.
More than one.
The gunman would not come to us.
How long did all of...
Sitting down to get my seat, I noticed that a person came up to the front row, to the front right, sat down, and as credits were going, I know it seemed like he got a phone call. So he went out towards the emergency exit doorway, which I thought was unusual to take a phone call. And it seemed like he probably pried it open or probably did not let it latch all the way. Soon as the movie started, somebody came in, all black, gas mask, armor, and threw a gas can into the audience, and it went off, and then there was gunshots that took place.
We don't know. We have ideas. From what we saw, he wasn't alone. He had someone with him because the second can of tear gas didn't come from his side. He was completely dressed in black, head to toe. From what we saw, it seemed like he had something over his face, probably to prevent him from breathing it in. And we can only assume that someone got him in because he was hit. Whatever he was wearing seemed thick, so I don't think he would really. I think he'd stand out in the crowd.
The theater shooting incident that occurred a short time ago has given rise to countless questions. In this short video, I will focus on evidence found at the theater where the shooting is said to have occurred, specifically the blood evidence at the rear of the theater. To start, this is an overhead view of the Century Cinema in Aurora, Colorado, now owned by Cinemark. You may have read or heard persons involved in the investigation referring to the Sable side of the building. This is Sable Boulevard, of which they were referring, running across the full scene south of the building. To my knowledge, there is one emergency exit from Theater 9 shown here. Located at the right of the theater, just below and right of the screen, we'll be looking at the scene just outside. The supposed suspect's car was parked in the spot nearest this exit, shown here. It's a white Kia hatchback. I suspect the spot was available as the rear parking area was nearly empty at that time because of needing to enter through the front of the building. There are 9 theaters in the complex, so there are other exits at the rear shown here. These are exits from other theaters, though, and only Theater 8 is related to these events, since some people are said to have exited Theater 8 during the shooting. Since we're going to examine blood evidence behind the theater, let's take a closer look at an overhead photo of the scene taken later that morning. Ignoring other elements of the scene, notice what appears to be a single blood trail across the walkway nearest the building. The exit to Theater 9 is shown here. Note that it doesn't appear to have an outside doorknob or latch, but that's to be expected. I'm more interested in the blood trail, so let's take a closer look at a portion of the trail for its spatter pattern. As the trail is made of similar splotches at regular intervals, it clearly indicates that the heart rate caused these spurts from an arterial wound. It's very well known that blood spatters in the direction of travel, so from this pattern we can conclude the wounded person was traveling from right to left only once and leaving the only obvious trail across the scene. So let's summarize what we've ascertained. 1. There appears to be only one blood trail behind the theater. 2. As you can clearly see, that trail doesn't lead to or from the suspect's supposed vehicle. 3. As indicated by the shape and pattern of distribution, the blood is likely from an arterial wound. I won't speculate whether the wound was caused by a gunshot or knife blade. And 4. The wounded person traveled from right to left toward the theater exit. I can only conclude that the wounded person was not wounded inside the theater as claimed. I think it's worth looking at the area just outside the exit to examine the footprints left by stepping in the blood. I've highlighted just the more obvious prints in yellow. Some prints indicate walking both toward and away from the door, although it's not very clear at this distance. In this shot, you see the trail ending abruptly just outside of view from our overhead shot. In conclusion, there's one blood trail leading toward the theater exit, which means this person was likely wounded outside of the theater. Something to think about.